The next few days passed in a blur for Mia. She went back to her routine, searching for food, looking for a place to sleep, and trying to keep her thoughts from drifting back to the crash. It was the first time she had ever been involved in something like that, and she couldn't shake the image of the injured man's face. There was something about him that lingered in her mind, though she couldn't place what it was. She told herself to forget about him. After all, she had her own problems to deal with. But the memory of the accident kept creeping up, and she often found herself wondering if he was okay. Mia had always kept to herself, not letting others get too close, but that moment had changed something in her. The fact that she had been able to help someone, even in such a small way, gave her a sense of purpose. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was making a difference, even if it was just for a moment. As for Marcus, the billionaire businessman, he couldn't stop thinking about the young woman who had saved his life. After the accident, he had spent several days in the hospital, recovering from the shock and the injuries. But no matter how many visitors came or how many calls he received, he couldn't shake the feeling that something important had happened that day. He knew the girl who had helped him was different from anyone he had ever met. There was a calmness in her actions, a kindness in her eyes that seemed out of place in his world of wealth and status. Marcus couldn't get her out of his mind. He had tried to focus on work, to get back to his usual routine, but he couldn't stop wondering about the girl on the street. He had always lived a life of luxury, surrounded by expensive things and people who flattered him. But none of that had ever brought him true happiness. And now, here was this young woman who had nothing, yet still took the time to save him. It made him realize just how disconnected he had become from the world around him. Determined to find her, Marcus asked around the hospital and the neighborhood where the crash had happened. After some time, he finally got a lead. Someone had told him about a shelter nearby, where a girl who fit the description of the one who had helped him sometimes stayed. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Marcus didn't know what he expected when he walked into that shelter. He didn't even know why he was doing this. Perhaps he was just looking for a way to repay her, or maybe it was something deeper, something he couldn't explain. But as soon as he stepped inside, he felt a sense of unease. The place was crowded, filled with people who had nowhere else to go, but amidst all the chaos, he spotted her. Mia was sitting quietly in the corner, lost in her own thoughts. At first, Maya didn't recognize him. She had seen so many faces on the streets that they all blurred together. But when Marcus approached her, she could tell he wasn't just another passerby. He was different, somehow. He was well-dressed, carrying himself with an air of confidence that stood in stark contrast to the environment around them. "Hey," Marcus said, cautiously sitting down across from her. "I'm the guy you saved the other day. I wanted to thank you." Mia looked at him, a bit confused. She had expected someone from the hospital, maybe a nurse or a doctor, but not this man. "I didn't do anything special," she replied, her voice quiet. "Just helped you out when you needed it." But Marcus could see the humility in her eyes. He knew she was not used to being recognized or appreciated. It was more than that. "You saved my life. I owe you." Mia shifted uncomfortably. "I don't need anything from you," she said quickly, not wanting to get caught up in something she couldn't handle. Marcus nodded, understanding her hesitation. "I just want to help," he said gently. "If you need anything, I'm here. No strings attached. You deserve better than this." Mia was silent for a moment. The idea of someone offering to help her felt strange, almost too good to be true. But there was something in his sincerity that made her pause. Maybe it was just the shock of the situation, or maybe it was the unexpected kindness that made her feel like she wasn't invisible anymore. For the first time in a long while, Mia felt a spark of hope. Over the next few days, Mia couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. The offer he had made was still lingering in her mind. It wasn't just the promise of help that kept her awake at night. It was the fact that someone cared enough to offer. She was used to being invisible to the world. Most people walked past her without a second thought. But Marcus had seen her, truly seen her. He had looked at her like She was worth something more than just a stranger on the street. It was a strange feeling for Mia. She had always relied on herself. Trusting others wasn't something she did easily. The streets had taught her to be independent, to keep her guard up, and to never expect anything from anyone. People would often pass by her, offering only pity or worse, ignoring her altogether. But Marcus was different. He hadn't pitied her. He hadn't tried to give her charity. He had simply been grateful, and there was something real in his eyes that made her wonder if maybe she could let her guard down just a little. Still, Mia wasn't sure. It wasn't easy to accept help, especially from someone like Marcus. She had seen how the rich lived, how they had everything handed to them. She couldn't imagine her life fitting into that world. And yet there was something in his voice, something in his offer that made her think that maybe, just maybe, he wasn't like the others. One afternoon, Mia decided to take a chance. She agreed to meet Marcus again. This time, she wasn't sure if she was looking for answers or simply testing the waters. She arrived at the small cafe they had agreed on, unsure of what to expect. When she walked in, she saw him sitting at a table by the window, his eyes immediately finding hers as she stepped through the door. He smiled warmly, and Maya felt a strange flutter in her chest. It wasn't the kind of smile she was used to seeing. It wasn't a smile of superiority or amusement, but one that seemed genuine and kind. He greeted her as she sat down. "I'm glad you came." Mia nodded, still unsure of what to say. "You really want to help me?" she asked quietly, her eyes scanning his face for any sign of insincerity. Marcus looked at her with a seriousness that made her feel like she was the only person in the room. "I do," he said. "I know I can't undo the past, but I want to make things better for you now. You don't have to keep living like this, Mia." The mention of her name made her feel a little vulnerable. She had forgotten how rare it was to hear someone speak her name with respect, as if she mattered. She didn't know what to make of his words, but something in her heart softened. She had heard similar promises before, from people who were just looking for a way to feel good about themselves. But there was something different about Marcus. His sincerity was undeniable. For a while, they just talked. He asked about her life, her past, and what led her to this point. Mia was hesitant at first, but as they spoke, she began to open up. She shared bits and pieces of her story, how she had lost her family, how she had been forced to fend for herself when things went wrong. Marcus listened intently, never interrupting, never judging. For the first time, in a long while, Mia felt like someone truly understood her pain. But as the conversation went on, Mia couldn't help but feel a pang of unease. She had always prided herself on being strong, on being able to handle things on her own. She didn't want to rely on anyone. It made her feel weak, like she was giving up. But Marcus wasn't asking her to give up anything. He was offering her a chance to start over, to have a future she never thought was possible. After a while, Maya finally spoke. "I don't know if I can accept your help," she admitted. "I'm not used to depending on anyone. And what if it all goes wrong? What if I let you down?" Marcus leaned forward, his voice soft but firm. "You won't let me down, Mia. I'm not asking you to change who you are. I just want to give you a chance, a way out. You deserve better than this." Mia looked into his eyes, feeling the weight of his words. She wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment, for the first time in a long while, she felt like there might be a chance for something better. Something real. The next few days were filled with mixed emotions for Mia. She had agreed to let Marcus help her, but now that she had made the decision, she wasn't sure what to expect. The streets had been her home for so long that the idea of leaving it all behind was both exciting and terrifying. She had learned to survive on her own, and the thought of depending on someone else felt strange. Could she really trust him? Could she really step into a world she wasn't sure she belonged in? Marcus, for his part, was patient. He knew it would take time for Mia to adjust, but he was willing to give her the space she needed. He had seen something in her, something that made him believe she deserved more than what life had dealt her. He didn't want to rush her or pressure her. He simply wanted to offer her a better future, a chance at something beyond the streets. They met a few times over the next week. Each time, Mia seemed a little more open, a little more willing to consider the possibilities. Marcus never pushed her too hard. Instead, they spent their time talking, getting to know each other. He learned about her past, how she had grown up in a tight-knit family that had fallen apart, how she had tried to make a life for herself in a world that had rejected her. Maya spoke about the pain of losing everything, of becoming invisible to society. She had learned to guard her heart, to never expect anything from anyone. And yet, here was Marcus, offering her help without asking for anything in return. One afternoon, Marcus invited her to visit his office. He had a small space on the top floor of a sleek building downtown, with a breathtaking view of the city below. Mia was hesitant, unsure of what to expect, but she agreed. When she arrived, she was struck by how different the place felt from everything she had known. The polished wood floors, the modern furniture, the clean, crisp air. It was a world that seemed so far removed from the life she had been living. But Marcus welcomed her with a warm smile, showing her around the office as if it were a normal part of his day. "You can stay as long as you need," Marcus told her as they walked through the space. "I'll make sure you have everything you need. No one is going to judge you here. You can be yourself." Mia was speechless. She had never been treated like this before. The people she had encountered in her life were either too busy to notice her or too quick to judge. But here was Marcus, showing her around his world like it was nothing special. And for a moment, Mia felt like maybe she could belong in this world. The next few days passed quickly. Mia spent some time getting to know Marcus better, learning about his work and his life. He wasn't just a billionaire businessman. He was a man who had lost a part of himself, someone who understood what it meant to be disconnected and lonely. He shared stories about his daughter, the one he had lost years ago, and the pain of not knowing what happened to her. Maya listened quietly, understanding more than he realized. She had lost so much too, but she also saw how deeply he cared. The way he spoke about her made it clear that she was more than just a memory to him. She was the one thing he wanted more than anything. Mia began to feel a connection to Marcus that went beyond just being someone who helped her. She began to see him as more than just a wealthy businessman. He was kind, thoughtful, and most importantly, he didn't expect anything from her. In a world where everyone seemed to want something, he was different. One evening, as they sat together in his office, Mia hesitated before speaking. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You've given me so much already. I never thought someone like you would even care about someone like me." Marcus looked at her, his expression serious. "You don't have to thank me, Mia. I'm doing this because I believe in you. You have a lot to offer, even if you don't see it yet." Mia felt a wave of emotion wash over her. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. She wasn't just a homeless girl anymore. She wasn't just a person to be pitied. She was someone who mattered. As she sat there, looking out at the city skyline, Maya realized something. She wasn't sure where this path would lead her, but for the first time, she felt like it was worth following. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for a new life. Maybe she could find a place where she belonged. As the days passed, Maya found herself adjusting to the new life Marcus was offering her. But it wasn't an easy transition. She had always been used to the struggle, the unpredictability of life on the streets. The constant fight for survival had kept her sharp, made her resilient. But now, in Marcus' world, everything felt different. The quiet, the order, the comfort. It was overwhelming at times. She still found herself waking up in the middle of the night, expecting to be in a cold, unfamiliar alley, only to find herself in a warm bed with soft sheets. It was a reality she had to remind herself to get used to. Marcus was patient with her, never rushing her into anything. He gave her space to adjust, but he also gently encouraged her to take small steps forward. Every day, they would spend some time together, whether it was having coffee in the morning or simply talking about their day. Sometimes he would take her to places she had never dreamed of visiting, museums, parks, and even quiet corners of the city where people were kind and respectful. Mia started to feel the weight of the walls she had built around herself begin to crack. She had kept people at arm's length for so long, never allowing herself to trust or let anyone in. But Marcus wasn't like the others. He didn't ask for anything in return, and slowly she began to see that maybe she could trust him. Maybe she could allow herself to experience the kindness that had always been so foreign to her. One afternoon, as they sat in the park, Marcus asked her again if she was ready to make a decision about her future. He had been patient, waiting for her to take the next step, but he knew that deep down, Mia was still uncertain. "I know you're not used to depending on anyone," Marcus said, his voice soft but firm. "But you don't have to do this alone anymore. You have a chance for something better, Mia, a chance to build the life you've always dreamed of." Mia looked down at her hands, unsure of what to say. She had never been asked to dream before. She had always been too focused on survival to think about anything else. But now, in this moment, the possibility of a different life began to feel real. "I don't know if I can do it," Mia admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to trust that this is real, that this is my chance." Marcus gently took her hand, his touch comforting. "You don't have to have all the answers right now. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm just asking you to take the first step." Mia looked up at him, his kind eyes reassuring her in a way she hadn't felt before. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe in something better. She didn't have to have all the answers, and she didn't need to rush. But she could take that first step. The next day, Marcus invited Mia to go with him to a shelter for displaced people, where they offered resources to help those in need. He had been involved with the organization for a long time, helping them provide food, clothes, and medical support to those who had fallen through the cracks of society. Mia had always seen these kinds of places from the outside, never imagining that one day she could be on the inside, getting help instead of giving it. When they arrived at the shelter, Mia felt a mix of emotions. On the one hand, it felt familiar, the chaos, the crowded rooms, the sense of uncertainty. But on the other hand, it was different this time. She wasn't just one of the people there, hoping for a handout. She was part of something bigger. She could see how Marcus' efforts were helping others, and for the first time, she felt like maybe she could be part of that change too. As they walked through the shelter, Mia noticed something she hadn't expected: the smiles. The people here weren't just surviving. They were living. They had their struggles, but they also had hope. Mia felt that hope ignite within her too. Maybe this was her chance to find her place. Maybe she wasn't just a homeless girl anymore. Maybe, with a little help, she could start building a new life. Later that evening, as they walked back to Marcus' office, Mia felt lighter. The uncertainty that had weighed on her for so long was still there, but now there was something else too: hope. She wasn't sure where this path would lead her, but for the first time, she was willing to take that next step. She was ready to trust Marcus and trust herself. After all, maybe it was time to start living, not just surviving. It was a rainy afternoon when Mia, a young black woman, found herself once again on the streets. She had been homeless for almost a year now, struggling to make ends meet. But she was strong. No matter how many obstacles came her way, she kept fighting. The city was cold and unwelcoming, and the people passing by often ignored her. Yet, Mia had learned to adapt. Her days consisted of searching for food, finding shelter in places like alleyways and abandoned buildings, and trying to stay safe from the dangers of the streets. Mia didn't mind the loneliness too much. She had come to accept that this was her reality. Her dreams of a better life seemed so far out of reach. Every time she thought of her past, of the family she had once had, the life she had hoped for, it felt like it was all slipping further away. But she had a fierce determination. She knew she couldn't give up. Her hope was that one day, somehow, something would change, that maybe she'd find a way out. but until then, she would survive. Meanwhile, a few miles away, in a much more comfortable part of the city, was Marcus Williams, a successful businessman. He had it all: wealth, luxury, and the respect of everyone around him. But despite all of it, Marcus felt an emptiness inside. His life had always been about his career and the money he earned. He was often so focused on his business meetings and deals that he hardly had time for anything else. There were no meaningful connections in his life, no true friendships or family. The truth was, Marcus had a secret. Years ago, he had lost his daughter, a little girl who had vanished under mysterious circumstances. He'd spent years searching for her, but the trail had gone cold. The pain of losing her haunted him every day, no matter how much he tried to push it out of his mind. The thought of his daughter, wherever she was, consumed him. But over time, he had become numb to the pain. He buried himself in his work, trying to fill the void with success. One day, as Marcus drove through the crowded streets of the city, his thoughts were distant. The rain had started falling harder, and the road was slippery. As he made his way through a busy intersection, the car suddenly slid, losing control in a way that was impossible to predict. The sound of the tires screeching and the violent jolt of the car crashing against the curb snapped him back to reality. Everything happened so fast. In that moment, Marcus didn't know what was going on, but he knew he needed help. Mia was walking nearby, trying to find a dry spot to rest for a moment. When she heard the screeching tires, she instinctively turned her head, and her eyes widened as she saw the car swerve and slam into the curb. Without thinking, she rushed toward the crash. The scene was chaotic, with people starting to gather around, but no one seemed to act. Everyone was staring, unsure of what to do. But Mia couldn't just stand there. She darted forward, her heart racing, and yanked open the car door. Inside, the driver, a man who looked stunned and hurt, was barely conscious. "Hey, are you okay?" Maya shouted, pulling him out of the car, dragging him to the sidewalk. His head was bleeding, but she could tell he was alive. She knew she didn't have much time. As she helped him, trying to keep him conscious, she realized how fragile life was. Despite everything she had been through, she still had the strength to help someone else. She didn't know who he was, but that didn't matter. What mattered was that he needed help. Maya stayed with him until the paramedics arrived, doing what little she could to keep him safe. After they took him away, Maya stood there for a moment, watching the scene. She had no idea who this man was, but something about the whole situation felt strange. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she couldn't help but wonder if this encounter would mean something more than just a chance meeting. The days following the visit to the shelter were filled with a mix of emotions for Mia. She was beginning to adjust, slowly, to her new life with Marcus. The path forward was still unclear, but with every passing day, she felt a little more at ease. Marcus was patient, understanding, and always encouraging. It wasn't just about giving her a place to stay or providing for her needs. It was about showing her that she had the potential to live a different life. A life where she wasn't defined by her past or the struggles she had faced. Mia had never thought she could feel this way. She had spent years building walls around her heart, pushing away anyone who tried to get close. The pain of losing her family, of being abandoned by the people she loved, had made her cautious. Trust didn't come easy, but with Marcus something was different. He wasn't asking for anything in return. He simply wanted to help. And slowly, Mia began to believe him. Slowly, she began to trust him. One afternoon, Marcus invited her to his office again. This time, however, he had something different in mind. He wanted to show her a part of his life that he hadn't shared with anyone before. His past. It was a side of him that Mia hadn't yet seen, and she was curious. They sat in his office, and Marcus pulled out an old weathered box from a drawer. It was full of photographs, letters, and mementos from his life before all the wealth, before the business empire. As he opened the box, he began to share stories of his childhood, of his family, and of the daughter he had lost. The pain in Marcus' voice was evident as he spoke of his daughter, the little girl who had disappeared so many years ago. He told Mia about the times they had shared, about the joy she had brought into his life, and about the ache he still carried in his heart every day. Maya listened quietly, not sure how to respond. She had never heard someone speak with so much love, so much longing for someone they had lost. It reminded her of the love she once had for her own family, a love that had been shattered by time and circumstances. As Marcus spoke, Mia couldn't help but feel a strange connection to him. The pain in his voice mirrored something deep inside her, something she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge in a long time. She had lost her family too, in her own way. And now she was standing in front of a man who had experienced the same kind of loss. She could feel the weight of his words, and for the first time, she saw him as more than just the wealthy businessman who had helped her. She saw him as a person, someone who had experienced the depths of pain and was now reaching out to her in an effort to heal. "Marcus," Maya said softly, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "I'm sorry about your daughter. I can't imagine what it's been like for you." Marcus smiled, though it was tinged with sadness. "Thank you, Mia. It's been a long road, but talking about her helps. I've never been able to let go of the hope that I might find her again." Mia nodded, her heart heavy. "I know what it's like to lose someone you love," she said quietly. "But I think we can still find our way. We can still move forward." Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with both sadness and gratitude. "You're right," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been so focused on what I've lost that I haven't allowed myself to see what I still have. You've shown me that, Mia. You've shown me that there's still hope." In that moment, Mia felt a sense of understanding, a deep connection that went beyond their shared pain. She wasn't sure if it was fate or just a twist of chance, but she realized that Marcus wasn't just helping her. He was helping himself too. They both had lost so much, but now they had the chance to rebuild, to find healing together. As they sat there, the weight of their pasts hanging between them, there was a quiet understanding that things could be different. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, and there would be challenges along the way. But Maya felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in a long while. Maybe this was the beginning of something new, something better for both of them. The connection between Marcus and Mia was growing stronger, and with every step they took, it felt like they were both healing from the wounds that had kept them apart from the world for so long. And as the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the window of Marcus' office, Maya realized that she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was starting to live. The weeks that followed were filled with small, yet meaningful steps for Mia. With Marcus' support, she slowly started building a new life. But it wasn't without its struggles. She was adjusting to a life that was so different from everything she had known. For so long, survival had been her focus. Finding food, staying safe, and getting by. Now she was starting to think about the future, about what she wanted out of life. And it felt both exciting and overwhelming. Marcus continued to be a constant in her life. He never pushed her too hard, never made her feel like she was failing if things didn't move fast enough. Instead, he offered a steady presence, someone who believed in her when she wasn't sure if she could believe in herself. He had shown her kindness, patience, and understanding, things she had never experienced in such abundance before. But Mia couldn't help feeling like there was still something she wasn't fully facing. She had let herself trust Marcus, but a part of her still clung to the fear of letting people in, the fear of being hurt again. One evening, as they sat together in the park, Marcus turned to her with a serious expression. "Mia, I want to ask you something," he began. "I've been thinking a lot about where you're headed and how you're doing. But more than that, I need to know, what do you want out of life now? What do you see for yourself in the future?" The question caught her off guard. She hadn't really thought about the future in such clear terms. Sure, she had dreams once, things she wanted to achieve, places she wanted to go. But after everything that had happened, those dreams had faded. They felt like they belonged to someone else, someone who hadn't experienced the pain she had. "I don't know," Maya said quietly, looking down at the ground. "I guess I never really thought I'd have a future. It always felt like I was just getting by, one day at a time." Marcus nodded, understanding more than she realized. "I get that," he said, "but you do have a future, Mia. I see it in you. I see how strong you are, how capable you are. And I want you to know that you don't have to keep living like you've been. You can dream again. You can build something better." Mia felt a lump in her throat. It was hard to imagine a future that wasn't tied to her past, but Marcus' words lingered in her mind. He was offering her a chance to rewrite her story, to take control of her life in a way that she hadn't thought was possible. But she was still scared. What if it didn't work? What if she couldn't change? Over the next few days, Maya spent more time reflecting on Marcus' words. She thought about the things she had wanted when she was younger, before life had become so difficult. She remembered how she had once dreamed of becoming a teacher, of helping kids who were like her, kids who didn't have the opportunities they deserved. The idea felt almost like a distant memory, but it was there, buried deep inside her. She talked to Marcus about it one evening. "I used to want to teach," she confessed, "but I thought that was just a dream, something that people like me didn't get to do." Marcus looked at her with a warm smile. "That's a great dream, Mia. And I believe you can do it. You've already proven how strong and resourceful you are. You've been through so much. And look at how far you've come. I know you can make it happen." Hearing Marcus say those words gave Mia a sense of hope she hadn't felt in years. She started to think about what it would take to make that dream come true. It wouldn't be easy. She would have to work hard, study, and learn things she hadn't even considered before. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like it was possible. Maybe it wasn't too late for her to create a future for herself. In the weeks that followed, Mia began taking small steps toward her dream. She enrolled in a community college to get her high school diploma and started working part-time at a local store to save money for tuition. It wasn't easy, and there were days when she felt like giving up, but she pushed through. Each small success made her believe in herself more and more. One afternoon, as Mia was studying in a quiet cafe, she received a message from Marcus. It was simple but meaningful. "I'm proud of you, Mia." Those words, coming from him, filled her with a sense of pride she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building something for herself, something that mattered. As she looked out the window that afternoon, Maya realized that the road ahead wasn't just about escaping her past. It was about creating a future that was all her own. And with Marcus by her side, supporting her every step of the way, she knew she could finally have the life she had always dreamed of. The journey that Mia had embarked on was far from easy, but it was starting to feel like something real. The changes in her life were gradual but undeniable. With each passing day, she found herself becoming more confident, more certain of her place in the world. Her time spent with Marcus had opened up possibilities she hadn't dared to dream of in years. She was no longer just a girl surviving on the streets. She was a woman taking charge of her future, and it felt incredible. One evening, as Mia was finishing up a long day of work, Marcus called her. His voice was warm and encouraging, just like always. "Mia, how's everything going?" he asked, and she could hear the genuine care in his tone. "I'm doing okay," she replied, smiling to herself. "I'm getting the hang of things at work, and school's been challenging, but I'm keeping up." The more she spoke, the more she realized how much she had grown. She had a rhythm now, a routine. She was taking ownership of her life, and it felt good. "That's great to hear," Marcus said. "I'm really proud of you, Mia. I knew you had it in you." His words meant more to her than he could possibly understand. Every compliment, every bit of encouragement from Marcus was a reminder of how far she had come. He had believed in her when she didn't even believe in herself, and because of that, Maya was beginning to truly believe in her potential. As they talked, Marcus mentioned an event that was coming up. a gala he was attending for the charity he worked with. He mentioned that it was an opportunity for people to meet, share ideas, and support causes that meant something to them. I think it would be a great opportunity for you to meet some new people and see a different side of the world, he suggested. At first, Mia hesitated. The idea of being in a room full of wealthy, successful people felt overwhelming. She wasn't sure she belonged there, but Marcus reassured her, reminding her that she had already proven how much strength she had. "You've come so far, Mia," he said, "and you deserve to be there just as much as anyone else." After a long pause, Mia agreed. "Okay," she said, her voice steady, but with a hint of nervousness. "I'll go." The night of the gala arrived, and Maya found herself standing in front of a full-length mirror, unsure of what to expect. She had borrowed a dress from a local charity that helped provide clothing for people in need, and it made her feel elegant, but also a little out of place. Still, she couldn't deny the excitement bubbling inside her. For the first time, she was stepping into a world that had always seemed so distant, one filled with opportunity, connections, and hope. When she arrived at the venue, Marcus was there waiting for her. He smiled warmly when he saw her, clearly pleased that she had come. "You look amazing," he said, and Maya felt a surge of confidence wash over her. The people around her were well-dressed, sophisticated, but no longer did she feel like she was an outsider. She was there because she belonged. As the evening progressed, Maya found herself speaking with different people, learning about their lives, their businesses, and their passions. She was surprised by how many people were genuinely interested in hearing her story. It wasn't about her past or where she had come from. It was about who she was now. And Mia was beginning to see that she was more than just a girl who had once been homeless. She was someone with dreams, someone with value. By the end of the night, Mia was exhausted but filled with a sense of accomplishment. She had stepped into a new world, one that she had once thought was beyond her reach, and not only had she survived, it had been a success. She had made connections, she had shared her thoughts, and most importantly, she had proven to herself that she was capable of so much more than she had ever imagined. As they left the event, Marcus walked beside her, his presence calm and reassuring. "You did great tonight," he said. "I'm really proud of you, Mia." She smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for everything Marcus had done for her. But more than that, she felt proud of herself. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but full of meaning. "I never thought I'd be here, doing something like this. But I think I'm finally starting to see that I have a future, a real future." Marcus looked at her with warmth in his eyes. "You've always had that future inside you, Mia. You just needed someone to believe in you. And now you're ready to believe in yourself." As they walked down the street, the night air crisp and fresh, Maya realized how far she had come. She was no longer just a survivor. She was someone who had found her place in the world, someone who had dreams she was determined to chase. The journey wasn't over, and she knew there would still be challenges ahead. But for the first time in years, Maya felt certain about one thing: her future was bright, and it was hers to create.